Hello everyone and welcome back to the Witch of Bees and Bones. This is a very impromptu video. We're going to talk about crows today. Um, as I've mentioned in the past, I'm not a big fan of winter or being cold or snow, but I'm trying to find the beauty in the season, so I was out in the woods this morning early. It's still early, but I was out there before sunup. Elijah woke me up to say hello multiple times in the night, and I'm just like, okay, if I can't sleep, I'm just gonna get up. I wouldn't recommend walking around in the woods at night unless you know it really well. I've been on this property my whole life, so I know it very well. I know the animals, I know what I'm dealing with. And it is what it is. But I was out there trudging around, waiting for my snowshoes to arrive, so that'll make my life a little easier because in New Hampshire we just got a bunch of snow dumped on us, and I think there might be more coming tonight or tomorrow. I don't know, it's hard to keep track at this point. But while I was out there, this time of year there's a lot of different birds than one would find in the summer, but I kept hearing the crows call and seeing them fly around. And I don't know about you. Yeah, I know that crows are very witchy, but I love them so much. And I know that a lot of people find their cause, a little nerve-wracking, but I really enjoy them, and they're very special to me. And when I was growing up, as I said before, my father was a fish and game officer, and so we would occasionally raise injured slash abandoned animals, and mostly it was baby gray squirrels, which was a lot of fun. And then we'd, raise them and get them to a certain point and then release them. But we did take care of a couple of crows and a raven, actually, when I was growing up. And so I got a chance to really see these magnificent creatures up close, which gave me even more of a respect for them. The feathers on their underbellies are a lighter color where you don't see them. Their wing feathers are iridescent, as I'm sure a lot of you have seen crow feathers or have collected them or what have you. And their feet are very scaly, like reptiles, and they're magnificent. So I'm out in the woods. Sorry, I'm rambling. I was out in the woods and I kept hearing the crows, and then it came to me. So yesterday, I read this book, Lyanda, Lynn, Haupt, Crow Planet. So she is the same author that wrote the book Rooted that I mentioned last week. I have a couple of her other books, which I'm going to read soon, but this one was calling to me. This book discusses, it's called Crow Planet, Essential Wisdom from the Urban Wilderness. So she lives in near Puget Sound, other side of the country from where I am. But she talks about how crows are virtually everywhere except South America and Antarctica. That crows have been, or corvids have been around for 30 million years. 30 million years. It's a long fucking time. I think there's at least 40, if not over 40 types of crows. That also includes ravens, but there are some differences. I'm not going to get into the ornithological point of all of that. But she mentions that everyone she knows has a crow story, and some of them are good and some of them are bad. Some people think that crows are evil or harbingers of death or what have you, and as you know, death is really the last thing I'm concerned about, and I'm always super excited when I see a crow. So the crow that we have here is the American crow. It's kind of, our standard crow here. And they are part of the songbird family, which people sometimes find that hard to believe. And they, their caw is their song, so to speak. They're pretty remarkable creatures. So I was reading this book yesterday, and I tagged a couple things that I wanted to share here, and I will link this book as well. And like my own body, the crow is arranged with rough, beautiful symmetry about a central axis. But I cannot adequately explain why, after just these few hours of spending time with the corvid, I can never look offhandedly at a living crow again. I cannot fully describe how, stepping back into normal life, I feel dizzy, trippy, and overcome by the constant unseen intricacy of living things. But I know that there's a name for it. And she goes on to talk about how that name is wonder. And that's how I feel every time I see a crow. I often have crows or ravens on my front lawn. And I just, like, every time I kind of see the wings swoop in, if I'm lucky enough to be home, it makes me so happy. And I just think they're pretty remarkable creatures. There's also, I listen to a podcast called Ologies by Alie. I will also link that in the notes, and I will link the particular episode that I'm going to talk about. She has an episode called Corvid Thanatology, and it talks about how crows have funerals. And I had heard this, I had read about it, but I'd never seen it. And then this past summer, there's a trail that I walk in the mornings when it's warm enough. And there's this particular place that there are typically a bunch of crows, and a murder of crows, if you will. And I walked by, and then I was on my way back, and I heard this sound. And I knew the sound was crows, but it's a sound I had never heard before. And so I just kind of stopped to observe, and they were a ways off, but I could still see them. And I realized, I looked, and there was a dead crow on the ground, and there were other crows around it, and then there were other crows up in the tree. And they were almost keening. It was a sound I've never heard from crows before, and they were all making the same call, and it was really interesting. And I stood there for some time, and they did their thing. And I don't want to anthropomorphize crows or any other animal, but I also relate so much to animals and respect them so much that I also don't want to speak as though they're dumb, because they're certainly not. And I just watched them, and then they all, did their thing, and then the call slowed down, and then they all flew away, and obviously the dead crow was left there. I don't know what happened to the crow. It wasn't there when I was walking by, so I don't know, maybe half an hour, 45 minutes from the time I walked and then turned around, it was there. And it was really sad. Seeing a dead animal, it always kind of breaks my heart. But it was also really beautiful to see these creatures observing. And so when she mentions that everybody has a crow story, I have hundreds, but that is my crow story. So in the episode of Ologies, they talk about crow funerals and other corvid related things, which are really fascinating. And on top of that, I was called to use this deck this morning when I was doing my daily draws. It is the MJ Cullinane deck, Urban Crow Oracle. It's a really great deck. It's the artwork is lovely. The cards are lovely. I will show you some of them. So this is the artwork on the back. And then trickery and battle. Play. Crows love to play. They will fly and drop sticks and either swoop down to catch it, or another crow will catch it, swoop up and then drop the stick for another crow. They enjoy having fun. Abundance. Displacement. Grief. And this is actually quite similar. They didn't have flowers around the dead crow that I saw, but there were many up in the branches and then several that surrounded the body of the deceased crow. Exposed, which is a great card. The natural predators for crows are humans, of course, because we tend to fuck everything up, and hawks and owls and raccoons. But they're pretty hardy animals, so they also tuck things away for later. I've always hoped, I've heard the story of the crow, I think it might be in Europe, that brings a little girl tokens and presents and shiny baubles. I've always wanted a relationship with a crow like that, but it hasn't happened yet. Observation, watching a little spider spin its web. Crows spend a lot of time watching, which I think is interesting as well. Warning. So I don't need to go through the whole deck, but this is a really special deck. It's a nice daily draw deck. It's not super intense, but it also does, cut to the chase and get to the point. The artwork is beautiful. The guidebook is really, it's a cute little guidebook. It fits right in the box. And then let me just, and each one has, a couple paragraphs talking about the card. So I will link this below as well. I've had this for, I don't know, probably not quite 2 months. I've used it quite a few times. And I'm really, really enjoying it. It's a fun deck. She also sent a calendar. When I purchased it, they were running a deal, so I got a calendar. So now I have a crow calendar as well. But I know that I'm all over the place, and I'm sorry. I get real excited about crows. They're industrious and they're family-minded, and they can live pretty much anywhere. I've heard them referred to as rats with wings because they're so industrious. They'll eat plants, they'll eat animals, they will harvest, they'll raid nests of other birds. They'll also eat carrion. They're not considered a scavenger per se, but they do scavenge. I have seen them on many a dead animal once some other critters have gotten into it and torn some bits off. And I think that there's a resilience to crows, and I think that's important to remember. I know that winter is a hard time for a lot of people. I've been, listening to some videos of other folks that are kind of going through it, struggles with, illness or the end of relationships or, just all sorts of things. And I think that crow reminds us to be resilient and to be strong and to be resourceful. And I think that's a really beautiful message from crow. I also, one of the deities I work with is the Morrigan, and of course, she loves her crows as well. Crows are all over mythology, they're all over deity, um, and there's something about the fact that they're everywhere, but people don't often pay attention to them. And I think it's really beautiful when we can pause for a moment, because I talk a lot about finding beauty in this world. And I think it's important for us to pause. And even when we see these creatures all of the time, because they're everywhere virtually, that we pay attention and we look at the shape of their wings and we look at the color of their feathers and we look at the intelligence in their eyes. And maybe connect to that for ourselves when things are a little too much in this world, which as of late they often are, at least for myself. Sometimes this is a tough world for me to be in. Um, and I have these great fantasies of being a hermit and living in the woods and, having my crow friends and my bobcat friends and all of that. Maybe someday, maybe when I'm in my crone years, but maybe when I'm in my retired crone years, I will retreat even further into the woods. But I just wanted to share this with you. I'm sorry it's all over the place. It's very impromptu, but like I said, between reading the book yesterday and being called to use the deck today and seeing the crows, or excuse me, hearing them this morning and then seeing them, I just thought it was important that I talk about these lovely creatures and for us to observe the nature around us. Because even if you're in the middle of the city, um, flowers come up through the sidewalk and birds fly over and flowers bloom. So even in the day to day, take a breath, look around, and find something beautiful because it really does help. So I look forward to seeing you soon. As ever, please subscribe and like and comment. I do read and respond to all of the comments, and you all have been lovely. So thank you for that. And I look forward to coming back and speaking to you again soon. Have a great day. Bye.